before I do that, it's necessary for me because I'm the face of ESPN, and obviously there's a lot of things that went on this week in regards to Pat McAfee and some of the news that he made with his show. And obviously Aaron Rodgers was one of those things. The other stuff that involved Pat McAfee and him calling out an executive and all of that other stuff, all I'm going to tell y'all is this. You don't have to mind your damn business, but I will mind mine. I'm an employee of ESPN for my day job. I don't discuss internal matters. That is none of my business. That is above my pay grade. Pat McAfee has his show. He's responsible for everything that goes on with his show. The executives that we answer to at ESPN, they're my bosses. And I'm not going to be stupid enough, irresponsible enough, immature enough to think about that I can talk about family business. I don't do that. That's not going to happen. So don't expect me to speak on that ever, ever. That's not how I roll. Having said all of that, Aaron Rodgers is a different matter because that's not necessarily an internal matter. That's a sports story. And Aaron Rodgers went on Pat McAfee's show a little more than a week ago and made news talking about one of our other colleagues under the Walt Disney banner, which would happen to be Jimmy Kimmel. Aaron Rodgers obviously had a few things to say about Jimmy Kimmel because he doesn't particularly like him. If you watch some of the videos where Jimmy Kimmel was making fun of Aaron Rodgers during COVID, when he was making fun of Aaron Rodgers because of some of his conspiracy theories, these are the kind of things that rubbed Aaron Rodgers the wrong way. So when Aaron Rodgers had an opportunity to take a stab or a jab at Jimmy Kimmel, what was it that he said? He said, and I'm looking for it here because I want to make sure that I find the direct quote that Aaron Rodgers said about Jimmy Kimmel, but he basically talked about, popping bottles, to be quite honest with you. He said how, everybody was looking forward to the list coming out, et cetera, et cetera. Just reading from my notes here. He doubled down once he had said what he said about Jimmy Kimmel. He said yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, I don't have any apologies, not for that guy from ABC. That's what Aaron Rodgers says. And so subsequently the news came down that Aaron Rodgers would not be on the Pat McAfee show anymore during this football season. Whether that's a permanent decision or whatever, I don't know. Don't care. I support Pat McAfee from the standpoint that I think he's an incredible talent. I like the guy personally. He's straight up. He lets you know where he stands. He's unapologetic about it. He don't give a damn who you are, black, white, male, female. He don't give a damn. He's going to let you know where he stands, and I respect that. As it pertains to the specificity of everything that's transpired, that's a different subject for another day. But when Rodgers on Tuesday had shot back at Jimmy Kimmel for making fun of him all of those months, in Rodgers' opinion, he said, I think it's impressive that a man who went to Arizona State and has 10 joke writers can read off a prompter. My education in JUCO and at JUCO and my 3 semesters at Cal, which I'm very proud of, has worked out for me, and I'm glad to see it's worked out for him. He said, but I wish him, as in Jimmy Kimmel, the best, but I don't give a shit what he says about me as long as he understands what I actually said, and I'm not accusing him of being on the list. That was Aaron Rodgers' retort to what Jimmy Kimmel had really, really lost it over. And what Jimmy Kimmel had really lost it over was Aaron Rodgers just saying that, folks are not looking forward to that list coming out, and one of those people is Jimmy Kimmel. Epstein, I'm sorry. I got my producers here with me. Jeffrey Epstein, being on the Jeffrey Epstein list, okay? So that's really what it is. If you want to hear what Jimmy Kimmel had to say, just as a reminder, Aaron Rodgers has a very high opinion of himself. He genuinely thinks that because God gave him the ability to throw a football, he's smarter than everybody else. We learned during COVID somehow he knows more about science than scientists. A guy who went to community college, then got into Cal on a football scholarship and didn't graduate. Someone who never spent a minute studying the human body is an expert in the field of immunology. Aaron got 2 A's on his report card, and they were both in the word Aaron. That part was funny. I have to admit that. All I want to say is this. take Aaron Rodgers at his word. I thought that he was despite long, lengthy ramblings on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday, I did believe and I did appreciate the fact that he came out and said, look, and I'm not calling him a pedophile. I'm not alluding to it. I was just taking a shot at a guy that's taking a shot at me. And anybody that would want to sit up there and label him such a derogatory, or to have such a derogatory label towards him, just don't do it in my name. That's nonsense. I don't want any part of that. So I do appreciate him saying that. But here's the reality of the situation. When Aaron Rodgers said what he said, it did allude to it. There's no escaping that. When he said what he said, it did allude to that. You do have some wackos out there that would automatically assume that Jimmy Kimmel was going to be on the list. So because of that negative attention from the Epstein list that you brought towards Jimmy Kimmel, the least you could do would say, I'm sorry about that. That's not what I intended to do. I was wrong for doing that. You could have said it like this. I don't like him. I don't like him a little bit. And I don't give a shit what he has to say about me ever. But I went a bit too far there. And I was wrong and left it at that. That's not what Aaron Rodgers elected to do. And as a result of it, it is what it is. He's no longer going to be on the Pat McAfee show for the remainder of this football season. Who knows whether or not he'll ever be back. And as a result, we go from there. As far as it pertains to people looking to give a shot to Pat McAfee, listen, Pat McAfee is his own man. Just like an abundance of people are their own man or their own woman working at ESPN. If I disagree with something you've done, so what? That doesn't mean I don't support you. And I got to tell you this, and I'm going to say it to everybody one last time so everybody understands this. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm very happy to have Pat McAfee at ESPN. Pat McAfee established himself with his own YouTube channel. He bet on himself years ago. He built a following amassing in excess of 2 million followers on YouTube. Okay, give the brother credit where credit is due. And there are people that don't want him to succeed, but there's a lot of people who do. And my only words to Pat McAfee is that as long as his show is on ESPN, anytime he wants me to come on, I'm happy to come on. He's been great to me, and I think he's going to succeed. And the one thing that I do feel compelled to address is these headlines about how his numbers and his ratings don't necessarily measure up to that of First Take. Well, no one has in the mornings. We've been number one for 12 years. But I guarantee you that Pat McAfee's show is doing better than the SportsCenter show. He succeeded. I guarantee you that Pat McAfee's numbers are climbing. I guarantee you that Pat McAfee's show will continue to get better and better. It's just that I intend for First Take to get better and better as well. He's not in the same time slot as me. I'm not competing with him. I want Pat McAfee to be successful. And guess what? The more successful he is, the better it is for somebody like me. Along with a plethora of other peoples. Because when the model is the model, when you give this, when you don't purchase the talent, you don't employ the talent, you purchase the show. That's a business model. So for people to root against that makes no sense to me. If Pat McAfee succeeds, you have any idea how many floodgates will be opened for other opportunities for other folks if Pat McAfee succeeds? What the hell are you rooting against him for? What are you rooting against him for? Now, is he in a quiet taste? Sure. Does he do things that most of us wouldn't do? Sure. But in the end, whether I agree or disagree with anything and how I feel is none of y'all damn business because that's an in-house matter, he's got my support. He's got my support from the standpoint I want his show to succeed on ESPN. It makes all of us better. And if you understand anything about business, the abundance of layoffs that took place before his arrival, those were employees or independent contractors. If you're losing money and you're trying to offset losses, you let folks go, you write it off, and you move on to a different era. And when the person that you bring in succeeds the old, and it's their business as opposed to them as an employee, then the overhead and everything that comes with it is your responsibility, not the company's, which means their liabilities are limited. That's why they made the deal they made. Whether it works out for ESPN or not remains to be seen. But make no mistake about it. Pat McAfee's my teammate at ESPN. Just like Shannon Sharp and Club Shay Shay, he's my teammate. Just like Ryan Clark in the Pivot, my teammate. I'm rooting for everybody. You're a teammate of mine, I want you to win. I want you to win. I'm sorry things didn't work out with Aaron Rodgers, or at least that appears to be the case. I'm a huge fan of Aaron Rodgers. I don't agree with what he alluded to, whether intentional or unintentional. Aaron Rodgers alluded to Jimmy Kimmel being on the Epstein list. Period. I'm not saying it was intentional. I'm not saying it was vicious. I'm not labeling it or judging it accordingly. I'm saying what impact it had. Because of the impact, you apologize. And I personally think he apologized. Doesn't stop me from loving Aaron Rodgers. He's a bad man. Got mad love for him. Wish I could watch him on the air talking about sports, not rambling about COVID and immunization and vaccines and all of that stuff. Even though some points he was making, I heard him loud and clear, because there's a lot of people that believe, just like he believes, that our government spent a lot of time lying to us, but that's a different subject for another day. But that brother is an all-world quarterback, a future Hall of Famer, and when he wants to talk football, don't tell me we don't want to hear what he has to say. Still got love for him. Just wish he had apologized to Jimmy Kimmel.